Okay, so I want you to picture a company. It's so old that its maps probably had sea monsters on them, but it was so revolutionary that it invented an idea that powers literally everything around us, from the phone in your hand to your favorite video games. This isn't just some boring history lesson. It's the wild origin story of the stock market.
I mean, have you ever really thought about it? How does a company get enough money to build factories all over the planet? Or design the next iPhone? Or pay a superstar athlete millions of dollars? It seems kind of impossible, doesn't it? Well, the answer doesn't start in some high-tech lab in Silicon Valley. Nope, it starts on the creaky wooden docks of the Netherlands, way back, over 400 years ago. We're not talking about computer code. We're talking about giant wooden sailing ships, terrifying voyages, and a treasure that, at the time, was worth more than gold: spices. But before we get to their amazing light bulb moment idea, you have to understand the huge ship-sinking problem they were dealing with. So back then, if you wanted to send a ship to Asia to get those spices, you and a few of your rich buddies had to pay for the whole thing: the ship, the crew, all of it. Then you just wait for a year, maybe two. If the ship actually came back, you were incredibly rich. But if it got wrecked in a storm or attacked by pirates, poof, you lost every single penny. So yeah, that old way was a massive, high-stakes gamble for just a handful of wealthy people. It was slow, it was small, and it was super, super risky. The new way that the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC, came up with, it was the total opposite. It was about getting thousands of people involved, sharing the risk, and thinking way, way bigger. So in 1602, the Dutch had an idea so powerful it would literally change how the world does business forever.
First thing they did, the government stepped in. They basically told all the small, competing trading groups, hey, stop fighting with each other, you're all one team now. And just like that, they mashed them all together to form one giant mega company, the Dutch East India Company, or VOC for short.
But that created a brand new problem. See, this company wasn't just for one trip, it was designed to last for decades, with a whole fleet of ships and permanent forts in Asia. How on earth could they raise enough money for something that huge? And this was the genius move. They decided to sell tiny little pieces of the company itself to absolutely anyone who wanted to buy one. Each little piece was called a share. This meant you weren't just funding one risky trip, you were investing in the entire company. And get this, if you bought a share, you became a shareholder, a part owner. So even if you only had one tiny slice, you owned a piece of all the ships, all the trading posts, all the spices. For the very first time, you didn't have to be a super rich merchant to get in on the action. A sailor, a baker, a shopkeeper, anybody could buy a piece of the adventure.
So how did this all work back in the 1600s without any computers or smartphones? Well, it was actually pretty simple and kind of cool. It was surprisingly straightforward. You'd just walk into a VOC office, say how much money you wanted to invest, and a clerk would write your name down in a huge book. That book was the official record. It was your proof that you owned a piece. And here's the most clever part. If you needed your money back, you didn't go ask the company. You just sold your share to somebody else who wanted it. So, the VOC raised a mind-boggling amount of money, way more than anyone had ever gathered before. What in the world did they spend it all on? They built a global empire. With all that cash, they built hundreds of ships. They hired thousands of soldiers and sailors, and they set up a whole network of forts and trading posts all across Asia. They basically created the world's first global corporation, and they managed the whole thing from their headquarters halfway around the world in modern-day Jakarta.
Okay, so let's go back to you. You've bought your share, you're a proud part owner. How do you actually get paid? How does this whole thing make you rich?
There were two main ways. First, dividends. If the company had a great year and made a lot of profit, it would share a piece of those profits with you, the owner. Sometimes they'd pay you in cash, but sometimes, and this is the best part, they'd literally pay you in spices. Like, here's a bag of super valuable pepper as your payout. The second way was to sell your share. If the company was doing great, more people would want to buy shares, and that would drive the price up. You could then sell your share for more than you paid for it.
Of course, this created a new kind of risk. If the VOC had a terrible year, maybe lost a bunch of ships, people would get scared and rush to sell their shares. The price would crash, and you could lose all the money you invested. And that's the basic risk and reward of the stock market that's still around today.
So let's connect the dots. Let's draw a line from this 400-year-old story all the way to the phone in your pocket and the sneakers on your feet. You can draw a perfectly straight line from that first idea back in 1602. Over 100 years later, the New York Stock Exchange was founded using the exact same principle. And now, today, stock markets all over the world operate 24/7, using that same system to connect millions of us to the companies that shape our lives.
And the really amazing thing is that the basic idea hasn't changed at all. It doesn't matter if you're funding ships to get spices or funding ships to go to space, it's still about millions of people putting their money together to share the risk and fund huge projects that would be impossible to do otherwise.
This quote really says it all. Every single time you see the stock market numbers scrolling on the news, or hear that Apple or Nike had a great quarter, you are seeing the direct descendant of that big idea from the Netherlands 4 centuries ago.
The VOC's invention of the share totally changed the world. It unlocked a new level of ambition and made massive projects possible. Which leaves us with a pretty cool question to think about. What's next? What new idea is going to come along that will once again completely revolutionize how we all team up to build the future?